Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thanks to those who are joining me live and thanks to those who are watching the archive. So appreciate the opportunity to connect with you guys today. If you're watching the archive, just a heads up that those who are joining me live are sharing introductions in the chat room. It's so good to meet all of you and to read your one-word description of caregiving. And it's good to have such a diverse group of individuals in terms of experiences and goals today. And I think we're going to have an interesting conversation. You are welcome to post questions as we go through today's workshop, and you're going to do a little bit of work. And as you do the work, you're welcome to post in the chat room. If you're watching the archive, now might be a good time to actually get some paper and pen because you're going to start jotting down some notes. Okay, Pam, it's good to see you. I'm glad you could be here today. Just a little bit about me. I launched one of the very first online caregiving communities in 1996. I managed that for 24 years. I sold it in March of 2020 to focus on training programs for those who want to coach family caregivers as well as lead support groups and help family caregivers navigate the systems. I helped my parents, and my mom died in 2022. My dad died in 2023. My brother died in 2021, and then his wife died in 2024. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about why workshops. I'm going to give you a framework to use to develop your own workshop. We're going to talk about obstacles, and there are obstacles, and a lot of them are actually in our head, but let's talk them out loud. So you know you're not the only one that worries about these things. I'm going to give you a couple things to do, to-dos, and we're going to share a bit about an opportunity to work with me to develop your own workshop. So that's how we'll close today. I started doing workshops for family caregivers actually in 1999. I didn't realize it was that long ago, but it was that long ago. And I really so enjoyed the opportunity to do a workshop, because the interaction was helpful, and it was helpful for me as I was sharing, for instance, a concept. How people responded to the concept gave me a deeper insight into what could I tweak about the content. The content only got better because I presented it. It was awesome to be in a group and see a community form because of the workshop between the audience. There is a potential for income. We're not going to really talk about that today, but there is an opportunity. And something that I think is really helpful to know is you create one workshop. It's not just for one audience. It's a workshop that you can share. And there are individuals who've been to the same workshop content that I do many times, and it's always a little different. That's what's so great about it. You can tailor the content to your audience. The other thing I love about doing workshops is it's not time intensive like writing a book. Oh, that takes forever. It's a little different than, for instance, launching a website. You do have to have some tech skills in terms of creating your PowerPoint, using Zoom, for instance, or if you're using AV equipment, but it's much easier. I can take an idea and turn it into a workshop so much quicker than I can do the same for a book. So that's what I love too. Once you have an idea, you're like, okay, let's turn it into a workshop. And I think when you're serving family caregivers, a workshop is a great way to stay really into the real-time reality of family caregiving. And when you're delivering workshops, you want to deliver what helps right now. Not what helped 5 years ago, but what helps right now. And the way to stay in tune is by giving workshops and cultivating a conversation about that content. A workshop can also become more than a workshop, and I'll show you how I did that in a little bit. And it can be, if you have your own small business, a way to generate income. Oops, sorry. I'm letting people in, and I'm using the slideshow, And I just told you that you don't need a lot of technical skills to use Zoom. And I just showed you that you do need technical skills. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's talk about caregiving. Now, there's a lot of images to use. This is the one that I pulled out today because I think about it as this wave that just overcomes you. And we know it's not just one wave, there's more waves coming, and it's hard to feel like you can catch your breath. You can come up for air. You just feel swallowed by it. It can be a terrible time. And if I were to think of one question that I think many family caregivers have in their head, it's a version of this. How do I get through this terrible time? How do I get through this terrible time? We've asked this question ourselves. It might be worded a little differently, but it's a question of how am I going to get through this day, this moment? How am I going to get to the other side? I started thinking about a framework to use that can become your workshop blueprint. And I thought about it in terms of a timeline we can think of. When we think of the terrible time, for instance, we just think of the wave. And I wanted to have a framework that lets us step back a little bit and think, huh, there was a wave and I swam. What did I do to swim? The timeline then can sound like this. Understanding the terrible time. I want to mention you probably have many, many, many terrible times. For today, you could pick one, whichever one that really just like stands out to you. Wow, is that a terrible time? A terrible time can be a moment, it can be a day, it can be weeks, it could be months. I think we go from a terrible time to a healing time. And because of that healing time, we gain an expertise, an insight, a wisdom that can help others. Here's an example of how it can look. In the summer of 2020, which was when the pandemic was really just, oh, what are we going to do? Right? We were on lockdown. It was so much uncertainty. What's going to happen to the economy? What's going to happen to our health? I was caring for my parents, and there was another business in the space that I'm in that took my content without my permission and would not remove it. I had asked several people within the organization, and they just ignored me. And they used my content to drive traffic to their website rather than to mine. So it was a way to circumvent, hijack, if you will. And I was trying to figure out, what do I do about this? And as I was stressing out about how do I get them to do this when they keep telling me they won't, their attorneys reached out to me. And their attorneys sent me these really awful requests. It was just terrible. So I got an attorney who was really nice. Gosh, she was a bulldog. She was totally on my side. She was a great ally. And they were using their attorneys to really just harass me to just let it go. But I thought, I'm not letting it go. And it was incredibly stressful for me. What I figured out that helped me was I would take a walk, and as I would walk, I would repeat a question in my head. And the question I repeated was, how will this work out for me in a lucrative, wonderful way? So as I walked and thought of that question, I felt better. I felt more relaxed. I would come back to my little apartment. I would get back to work, and I would think, huh, let's just see what happens. And ultimately, what happened is it worked out in a really lucrative, wonderful way. And the way I got them to leave me alone was filing a, a complaint with Google. And because I had all this documentation about reaching out to them denying my request to remove content that wasn't theirs, Google removed that content from their website and then removed their website from search results. Isn't that awesome? It was just like, ah, it was awesome. And then there were other things that happened that became lucrative for me out of this. Now, who would have thought this? That just little old me working out of my little apartment could actually win against people who were spending a lot of money on lawyers. And I really feel like it was because I asked a good question, and what wonderful, lucrative way would this work out for me? So my expertise became crafting questions. When I realized that a good question can really change things, I started asking good questions on Sundays, and it became a newsletter called the Sunday Question. And if you're a member of caringourway.com, you'll see those Sunday questions on Sunday. It became journals, and it also became a workshop to help others create a good question when they feel like they're in the midst of a terrible time. So the terrible time led to a healing time. For me, that healing time was walking and asking a good question, and that became an expertise. Now it's your turn. Okay, so I'd love for you to think of a terrible time. If you have pen and paper, start to think about a timeline of the terrible time. It's not required, it's just helpful for you to get a little bit of a perspective. What you're doing with your timeline is you're stepping back a little bit to get a view of the whole terrible time. And again, a terrible time can be moments, days, weeks, months, years, whatever you define as the right amount of time for the terrible time. And as you're thinking about the terrible time, what moments really stand out to you? It could be the moment that you just stand with tears running down your face, thinking, oh, what now? What now? You could think about where you were when you had that moment. You could think about who was with you. You could think about what the conversation was. You can even get as specific as to what you were wearing. And think about maybe the moment before you had that, oh, I just don't know how I can continue. Thinking about that moment before, the moment during, and then we're going to go to the next moment next when we get into the healing time. If anybody would like to share in the chat room, well, actually, I'm going to ask you to do it in just a minute. So hold on first. So I think you guys have been working diligently on putting a timeline to your terrible time. What you're doing today is a draft. This is just to get you started. And I love doing it this way, where you leave the workshop with a draft because it gets you started. And you don't have to remember later, wait, what did she say? You look at what you created and then you start to build it out. Let's think about the healing time. Just like we talked about the terrible time as being a time that works for you, healing time is also when you felt better. Your healing time is not about, oh, I forgave everyone, I felt complete, I was transformed. It is just healing, and it's healing, meaning it's in the process. Because I think when we've had a terrible time, healing can be lifelong. What we're looking at is, when did it feel like the healing started for you? And it could be because you settled on some thoughts that started to help you feel at peace. It could be that you started to use some strategies that helped you feel more in control. It could be that you took action that brought back hope. When you have an insight about a thought or a strategy or an action that you started taking, put that on your timeline. And your timeline might be a Thursday was the worst day and the terrible time. And then the healing time started on Monday. And it started because really you did something different. What was it? And again, it could be the way you thought, a change in a strategy. It was a new action. Maybe it was even new words that you started using. That's the start of your healing time. And you can add that to your timeline. Okay, I'm going to let you still marinate on that because now we're going to move into what's the expertise then that you built because of that. So your healing time started because you did something a little different. And then you continued to do it. And because you continued to do it, you developed an expertise. So thinking back to the example of the good question, I started really thinking about what are good questions. And every week I wrote a good question. And that became an expertise. When it became a workshop, I helped audience members create good questions. And just creating a good question for them changed their perspective. And for one audience member, it actually changed how she looked because she was quizzical. She was like, oh, I don't know what to do about this situation in my life. And I talked to her. I suggested a question and she, oh, yes, that's what I need. When you feel like that healing time really developed an expertise, add that to your timeline. Sticking with that same example of the questions, I really felt like it became an expertise when I launched the weekly newsletter. Because then it wasn't just, oh, something I do. It was something I do, and I committed to doing it. All right, so now we're ready to hear whatever you'd like to share. If you're watching the archive, you can start writing 6-word stories. We write 6-word stories on Caring Our Way. I love to write 6-word stories. So for those who are joining me live in the chat room, start writing 6-word stories. One about your terrible time, and then one about your wisdom. And when you're ready, go ahead and share them in the chat room. So an example, for instance, of wisdom can sound like, for me, good questions change the outcome. That's a good one. Good questions change the outcome. Okay, that's a good one. And then the terrible time could be overwhelmed by people taking too much. Taking too much. Yep, there's that 6 words. Oh, wow. Yes, I saw death in front of me. Wow. What a terrible time. Wow. That's a really powerful story. And it's relatable. And it's seeing death in front of us can leave us without words. And that story is really powerful because you've given us words. Oh, yeah. And Susan is sharing evacuated nursing home, brought him home. Wow. Now that's a story of a terrible time. And what's interesting is you have teased us with how you got him home. That's part of your expertise. Okay. Yes, I saw death in front of me. That's the first 6-word story. And then the wisdom is my family gave me strength. Beautiful, beautiful. I should have mentioned that with 6-word stories, you can use as many hyphens as you need. Your 6-word story might be 8 words with 2 hyphens, and that works. I think it's helpful to get a story straight down to 6 words because then you're forced to get to the bottom line, and that's the gold. That's the gold. Okay, calls for professional help were ignored. Ooh, that's a terrible time. Oh, and then Susan is sharing, I am stronger than I think. Giving up my life to caregiving, I look for beauty each day. Beautiful. Yes, so your expertise is about helping us find the beauty in the day. Helpless, following, crash. Lead firmly instead. That's Deborah's. Thank you, Deborah. Okay, we're going to move on. Keep writing, though. Oh, gosh. Okay. There's one more before we move on, and that is I was made for this. Thank you, Elle. That's a great one. I was made for this. Wow. I was made for this. You are too. So you can see how you can start to build it out into really this inspiring, encouraging workshop. A couple other transformations that I've had in terms of perspectives that have helped me develop workshops include every worry needs a plan. And then a good question becomes a helpful coping strategy. And one word can inspire comforting writing. When I was really in the throes of caring for my parents, I was already writing on a Monday called Weekly Caregiving Comforts, and I would be inspired by one word to write. And when I was caring for my parents, there was so much inspiration. I would take one word and then write, and it was really helpful. Okay, there's 2 more 6-word stories I'm going to share because Sharon has got hers in the chat room. Lost myself in caregiving my parents. Found myself through walking and talking. You can see how poetic these sound. They're beautiful. Thanks, you guys. It's hard to think of these on the spot. You guys are doing great on think of these on the spot. Okay, so let's think about how we actually rise up. So the wave was coming over us, and the water lily rises up and uses the water to bloom. So we're going to look at your wisdom that you gained and turn it into a workshop. So we're going to go through a framework. Here's your first step, and that's your signature story. And really, you've been writing your signature stories with the 6-word stories. It's typically challenge, solution, transformation. What we did today was terrible time, healing time, wisdom. I like this framework of terrible time, healing time, wisdom, because it feels compassionate for us during a really difficult time. And the framework that you use can actually be an exercise that you use in your workshop using this same framework: terrible time, healing time, wisdom. So your story builds from this. And if you want, this can be an interactive workshop that you use, interactive exercise that you use in your own workshop. Not required, just an idea. So, what challenged you? What resolved the challenge? And then what did you figure out because of that resolution? Again, terrible time, healing time, wisdom. And then when you're going to start to structure your content, you can use this flow. Your opening is your story. And then you define the problem. And your timeline is going to help you with that. Something that I think is really helpful with the timeline is it allows you to see what you don't need to tell. Sometimes we feel like we have to put in all the details. You actually don't. And the timeline will help you figure out which are the most important details that describe the problem. And then you're going to move your audience into a solution. And your solution is 3 to 5 strategies that you used inspired by your wisdom. I'm suggesting 3 to 5, but if you just had one, like I did, asking a good question, that's enough, because you can build out exercises to help people use that one strategy. And then after you present your solution, which is really your wisdom, you're going to have your audience actually practice doing that for themselves. And then when you close, you're going to share resources and then next steps. Follow me on Instagram, subscribe to my newsletter, join my online community, get my free workbook. If we can think about a structure that's pretty simple, it then feels possible. So you're going to build trust with your story. You're going to define the problem. You're going to share the solution that worked for you. You're going to help your audience practice using that solution for themselves, and then give them more, which includes resources and next steps. I wanted to give you another example of what this could look like. So in 1997, I staged the caregiving experience. In 1999, I presented the first iteration of this concept at the American Society on Aging conference. Someone came to the workshop and then hired me to do that as a keynote at a conference. And then I continued presenting. I didn't present the same thing over the years, though, because again, I want to stay in what's the reality right now. The title of the workshop has changed. I just completed a course to be a better speaker, and they challenged us to come up with 2 words as your title. And it used to be more than 2 words, and I have figured out my 2-word title for the latest version of this, and it's Staging Caregiving. And if I were to follow that formula I just gave you, this is what it would look like. I started developing the 6 stages concept because I heard family caregivers ask the same questions over and over. And I thought there's got to be a way I can answer this question so that it scales. It's not just me one-on-one, but it's a concept that I put out there. The questions that they asked me were, why me? Why now? What now? And I thought, I wonder if staging the experience could be the answers that guide family caregivers. So that's what I did. That became the 6 caregiving stages. Within the stages, there's keywords: ask, find, receive, welcome, allow, treasure. Those keywords become coping strategies. If a family caregiver can't think of anything else, they can remember one keyword that gives them guidance about what to do next. The concept became a book, and now it's a workshop that I deliver on a regular basis. It's a keynote. And I'll tell you what else it became too. So I just want to show you a couple of the tools that I developed with the concept. For instance, one of the interactive exercises includes wheels, and there's wheels for each keyword. And when I do the workshop or the keynote, we break out into small groups, and they'll have a discussion about good questions to ask, for instance. So that's the first keyword. So it becomes interactive in terms of work they do for themselves and a conversation that they have with others. And then there's tip sheets that I've developed that are easy to share on social media and easy to give away in a workshop. And here's an example of one of them. And then I evaluate myself, which sometimes keeps me up at night, but the fortitude of being someone who can manage evaluations, well, I don't know. Sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I feel like, oh gosh, it's too much. However, as professionals, we want to get used to being evaluated because it can give you good data. And the data that I have from my evaluations is that I have a high net promoter score for this workshop. That's really helpful when I am out there marketing this concept for others to hire me to give a keynote using this concept. Just as an aside, when you start to get evaluations for your workshops, wait at least 24 hours before you review them. Give yourself a chance to sleep, eat, rest, then look at your evaluations. Throw out a high, throw out a low. What's left is a realistic perspective on your workshop. It is good to get evaluations. I'm actually going to ask you to evaluate me today. It is helpful. It is helpful. Okay, so then not only did the concept become a book, but it also became a training program. So individuals wanted to learn how to actually deliver the 6 caregiving stages as a concept themselves. So I have a training program for that. And then I used it as the foundation for our caregiving consultant training program, which helps you coach and consult with family caregivers. Oh, you're welcome, Corey. So Corey is thanking me in the chat room about the evaluations, which is to throw out a low and throw out a high, and what's left is what's realistic. Okay, so that's what can happen when you have a concept that becomes more than a workshop. You can see it can grow. That's what I love about workshops. The opportunity to build something from your expertise is amazing. It's amazing. And when you start with the workshop, you have conversations that helps you better understand the expertise, that helps you create and generate more content that can help you with your book, with a course. Isn't that amazing that it starts with the terrible time, the healing time, and your expertise? I just want to also mention it doesn't happen overnight. And that's a good thing. You want it to happen over a period of time because that's when the insights will come, when you give it time, when you give it time. Okay, so we've put together an idea for your workshop, which is your expertise. We've put together a structure that you can use to build out your workshop. And now you might think, okay, now where do I take this? So you can look for conferences. And when you first start, it is great to do it for free. It's awesome to do it for free. Again, my first presentation of the 6 caregiving stages was free. It's awesome to do it for free. When you get referrals because people have seen you speak and present, that's when you can start charging. But it's great to do it for free. Again, it gets better the more you do it. The more you do it, you're going to get more opportunities. So you could look for conferences in your community online. You could submit a proposal to present at a conference. You could think about, for instance, where you worship and asking your house of worship if they would be open to having a workshop one evening for members of your congregation. If you are a member of a support group, for instance, you could ask your support group facilitator if you could present at one of the meetings. You could think about, where do you network professionally? Oftentimes, networking meetings require a speaker. You could request that you're a speaker. And then you could think about what online communities you're a member of, what opportunities there are to present virtually. Okay, so here are some obstacles. I don't know enough. You might think, I don't know enough. What you want to know is your expertise. What worked for you? That's your teaching moment. When you have a teaching moment, you have a workshop. And if you feel compelled to do a workshop and are kind of like, I'm not a good public speaker, the only way you'll get better is by public speaking. And you can start small. What's great is you get to define where you want to go with this. And perhaps you think, you know what, I would just love to reach members of my community. And I am only going to stay in this radius, and I'm only going to look for opportunities within this radius, and I'm only going to look for small groups. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Again, we don't always have to go for the big stage because it's impactful. And in front of a group of 5 people, it's impactful. And what if no one comes? And we all worry about that. I worry about that. I worried about that today. What if no one comes? And if no one comes, record. If you were going to do it virtually, record it. So now you have content. If one person comes, that's an audience, and provide a really great experience for them because it's good experience for you. Everybody has a workshop they've delivered where they thought, gosh, I didn't really have that many people who came. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It only matters that you're doing it, that you're committed to it. That's what matters. Now I see that I froze, but sometimes oh, there we go. I don't, I always go like this. If I freeze, and it really doesn't matter. It doesn't help anything, but it makes me feel better. Okay. And then use that framework that we just went through, those 6 steps of what your workshop outline is. So here's my suggestions for what you can do this week. Create your framework. So you're going to build out terrible time, healing time, expertise. You're building that out into your framework. Think about 3 places that might be opportunities for you to present. And then reach out to one and offer to do a free workshop. I'm just going to stop and ask if anybody has any questions. Okay, Susan has a question. You can unmute. Go ahead and unmute.
Sorry. How long a workshop would you say to start with?
I think it's okay to start with 30 minutes. And I'm going to share an offer with you to help you with a 25-minute workshop. We started doing 25-minute workshops in 2021 at the conferences that I host. And it's been awesome to do 25 minutes. You can then build it out into 50 minutes. But when you start with 25 minutes, it really compels you to get very specific with your words and you take out the fluff. And that's nice for an audience. If you reach out to an organization and say, I have a 30-minute workshop and I can be available for 10 minutes of questions afterwards, I think that's a nice opportunity. When we used to do 50 minutes, I would have presenters who literally would present for 20 minutes and then stop. And we were doing workshops for CEUs, which meant we had to fill 50 minutes of content. So the presenter would stop and say, okay, Denise, I'm done. And then I would have to fill the next 30 minutes. It was kind of a nightmare. That actually made me think about, okay, this isn't working. We need to make these shorter. So it's okay if it's 25 or 30 minutes plus time for Q&A. And the framework that we shared includes interactive exercises, and that makes it feel like it's moving along, that people are actually engaged and receiving, and it's really helpful. How does that sound to you, Susan?
A good starting place.
Yes, right. Start there. We don't have to fill 50 minutes. Start with 25 or 30 and then build it out from there. What's going to happen is once you start with 25 or 30 minutes, you're going to hear stories from your audience that you're going to start weaving into your presentation. And that's a great way to build it out to 50 minutes.
Thanks.
Okay, Deborah. Thanks for waiting, Deborah.
Hi, no problem. I'm sorry, I fractured my writing hand, so I'm not going fast enough today, but
You're in a terrible time.
yes, and I was very far from home in Hong Kong when it happened, so
Oh,
it's been
no.
a long couple of weeks.
Oh,
Thank you. I was trying to catch the 6 stages of caregiving, which I think I probably should know, but I got ask, find, receive, and the last one is treasure, but I missed 2 after that.
yeah. Welcome, allow. I'll say them again a little slower for you.
Thank you.
Ask, find, receive, welcome, allow, treasure. Those are the 6 keywords which become coping strategies, and there's a keyword in each of the stages.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Deborah.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, good to see you. Okay, I actually want to mention something to you. I was delivering the 6 caregiving stages as a keynote in Winnipeg. It was in January, it was 33 below. And it was a room full of family caregivers because they're Canadian and they are hardy. We actually have a friend from Canada who's with us today. So it didn't bother anybody that it was 34 below. I was like, oh my gosh. From Chicago, I still felt it was cold. Anyway, I was in the middle of the presentation. I got to the 5th stage and I was just about to present about it. And it occurred to me that I had missed something that was really important. And I changed the description of the stage in the middle of the presentation. And you know why I could do that? Because I had done it so many times. And that iteration, that always going through it, kept challenging me. What's right about this concept? What's realistic? What do I need to tweak? And it just so happened that in the middle of that event, I realized a tweak and it was, whoa, whoa. Again, bringing your work out into the world is how your work gets better. It's never perfect when you start. When I was in Winnipeg, I had already been presenting that concept for probably 10 years. And it took me 10 years to have that realization. 10 years. 10 years. But it's okay. Again, we evolve, we grow, we give ourselves that time to evolve and grow. And in terms of organizations, a recommendation for organizations that are local or national, if you have been in a caregiving situation that's specific to a disease process, reach out to a disease-specific organization. There could be a state chapter, there could be a local chapter, there could be a regional chapter. And then think about where you like to spend time. And then what's an organization that represents how you like to spend time. A caregiving situation is everywhere now. Everyone is impacted by a caregiving situation. Your workshop can be appropriate, even if it's a networking event that isn't specific to caregiving. But let's say, for instance, it's for women in business. They're going to be impacted by a caregiving experience. Your workshop would be absolutely relevant to deliver to them. Where do you like to go? What do you like to do? Those are the organizations you want to reach out to. And again, think about disease-specific organizations related to your experience. You can also check with your area agency on aging, and when their conference is, they might have a call for speakers and presenters. Oh, yes, Deborah, great idea. Oh, I spend a lot of time on AI. Thank you for reminding me of this. Thank you, Deborah. AI is a great resource to ask for conferences in your area. So Deborah is sharing, ask AI, whichever AI tool you use, to give you top 10 conferences on your topic. Request the websites, dates of next event, contact information for the coordinator. And you know what? It also helps when you think about who do you know who might be organizing events. It's always easier to start with someone you know. Who do you know? Okay, so here's my offer to you. So we've got a 6-month program that we're kicking off, and we're going to help you develop your workshop and give you an opportunity to actually present it. So it's a 6-month program. You receive guidance from me. We have monthly meetings. You're part of a cohort. And then you're going to debut your workshop at our virtual conference in February. What I like about this is oftentimes there are programs that help you build a workshop, but often don't give you a stage. And I think it's so nice to get a stage. And when you're worried about an audience, we're going to be your audience. Plus, I'm going to promote this to healthcare professionals so they can receive CEUs. The other part about this that's nice is then you're going to get testimonials from others in your cohort because they're going to hear your workshop, which is really great. So it's such a nice way to actually kick off your work as a workshop presenter. So the cohort starts September 11th. That's when we have our first meeting. We're going to limit it to 20. The February conference is February 21st and 28th. It's going to be 2 5-hour events. So you'll present during one of those days. And we've built it out so that you start to work on your unique message. You also create a workbook that goes with your workshop. You put it all together, and then we do dress rehearsal. Let's practice together. That is what's nice too. Practicing with others who are committed to your success. And then it's showtime, and that's in February. Okay, so for the 6-month program, it's $500. You can pay in full or 2 payments of $250. I've got some additional resources for you that I'm going to share before we close today. I also want to mention that there's a deal that's happening now. If you're interested in taking our certified caregiving consultant program, you can enroll in our workshop creator program at no charge. So when you enroll as our CCC program, you get the workshop creator program at no charge. So what you do is you spend 6 months with us, you become a certified caregiving consultant. And when you present in February, you're also going to use that opportunity to generate leads for your coaching business. So you have a workshop, you have a coaching business, and you have lead generating opportunities. Okay, and it's really just about how ready are you to move through this to the next step. I want to mention a couple other resources, and then I'm going to share a link in the chat room. We have a guide that can help you figure out if you're ready. So the guide is really a self-assessment to determine whether or not you're showing the 5 signs that you're ready to share your caregiving story. What I think is really interesting is that oftentimes it's about how you sit with another family caregiver as they share their story. I think that's really helpful to know. How does that feel to you? Because when you can sit with another sharing their story without thinking about yours, without wanting to jump in and fix, that means you're ready for a stage. You also could think about our Caregiving Listener Project as an opportunity to practice a story. Our next listener project is October 10th. Deborah is one of our most committed volunteers. She has been with us from the very beginning. If you'd like, you can join as a storyteller, and your 4-minute story can be a shortened version of your terrible time, your healing time, and your expertise. And it's an opportunity to practice it with someone and see how it feels, and then have a conversation about that story. So you can sign up to be a storyteller through Caring Our Way. And then if you think, I think I'm good, I'm ready to go, but I'd like someone to review my workshop, I can audit your workshop. And that's the other offer. Okay, so I'm going to put the link in the chat room where you can go and get, you know what, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. I'm going to put the link in the chat room where you can go to download your guide, to consider what would be helpful and appropriate for you. And then if it's helpful, you can also schedule time with me. So I'm directing you to a page that has the guide, information about how to enroll, either in just the workshop program or the consultant and the workshop program, and then my calendar link. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your stories. They were awesome. They were awesome. Powerful, powerful. And on that page, I'll also put this archive so you can watch it again. And I'll follow up with you guys tomorrow. I'll send an email out with the link to the page again. Okay, we've got a few minutes left. What questions might you have about anything we talked about today, including whether or not the workshop program is right for you? Yeah, go for it, Susan.
Those monthly meetings, is it a certain, first Tuesday or that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the first one is scheduled September 11th, and I think that's the second Thursday. So we'll probably follow that. And it's the second Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. However, it's all recorded. If
Okay.
you can't join live, you don't miss anything. It's all recorded.
And there's 5, like September, October, November, December, January, and then February we'd be in the,
On stage, but we'll do a meeting before we go on stage.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What would that be called? A hype huddle, maybe? Where we're in a huddle, virtual huddle, hyping each other up, ready to go.
And how long that presentation, how long would that presentation be?
That's 25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay.
And part of what you'll also learn in the program is how to expand that out to 50. What are the other tools, interactive exercises that you can start to think about adding in to get to 50 minutes with that? 25 minutes is just a nice way to start.
Yeah. So I'm doing the caregiving guide, your program that's the guide, and that
Yes,
has the workshop
yes.
already kind of available.
That's the 6 caregiving stages. Yes, you're
Right.
going to learn how to use that. Yes,
So we would weave our story into that.
yes, you
Okay.
can do that. Yes, absolutely. And if you do the workshop creator program, then you're going to have 2 workshops.
So we'd have our personal one and then
Yes,
use that one as
yes,
well.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. Corey is asking how many people participate in the February event, and do you mean from the perspective of the audience? How many audience members would join us?
Maybe it'd be easier just to come off mute instead of type. I guess both. How many people do you usually have presenting, and then how many do you usually have tuning in?
So typically we have about 50 who join us live, and this also will be archived, so you'll have others who will watch the archive. So 50 live is really great. That's a great audience to manage. It's great to practice doing an interactive event and a Zoom room at the same time. That's really helpful. And because it's a 5-hour event, there'll be 10 workshops per day. So that's why we're breaking up into 2 5-hour days. And Elle is asking, what's the difference between the specialist, the educator, and the consultant? So the specialist is someone who wants to be a personal assistant for family caregivers. And then the consultant training is someone who wants to coach and consult with family caregivers. And that's the program we're rolling in with the workshop creator. So if you enroll in the consultant program, you get the workshop creator at no charge. The educator can be part of the consultant training. It's the next level up for presenting. And you also can become a trainer when you complete the educator program. Sometimes people like to just start with the caregiving consultant program and then add in the next level later, which is perfectly fine. It's awesome if you want to do that. If you are thinking about starting a small business, it's helpful to take the level that includes the consultant, the educator, and the facilitator, because then you have this robust knowledge base of how not only to serve family caregivers, but how to market to them. And when you go to that page, you'll also see my calendar link. So you are always welcome to schedule time when you think, that sounds interesting. I have more questions. I'm happy to schedule time to answer more questions. And we're at top of the hour, so I think I'm going to close us. This was awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here today. It was wonderful to connect with you. Really fabulous. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for all you do. And I look forward to training with you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.